Okay, here with chapter 25, the Great Depression, we're going to try something new. We're going to use our imaginations, all right? I'm going to try my hardest to not sound like a robot, and I'm going to pretend like you are up at my desk and we are sitting here together talking about what goes on in section 1. You, on the other hand, are going to have to try really hard to pause if you missed out on something, rewind it if you need to. If you want to look at a graph again, go back and look at it, right? Pause it, things like that. All right, in what other world can you pause your teacher, rewind your teacher, or just mute your teacher altogether? Not that any of you, I think, would mute your teachers. All right, but with chapter 25, we're looking at the Great Depression and how the government goes about trying to get us out of the Great Depression. But first, we need to look at some of the background causes that lead to the Great Depression happening. Okay, the first thing is the root of the Great Depression takes place in the 1920s, and we just spent all this time talking about the Roaring '20s. All right, so we know that the 1920s was a period of fun, of spending. People had, most people had good jobs. There were some people who struggled, but for the most part, the country was doing well. And the 1928 candidate for president, Herbert Hoover, right, he essentially told the country that everything is just going to continue to soar. We're going to continue to do well. The prosperity of the 20s is not going to stop. It's going to keep right on going. Right? Little did he know that that wasn't going to happen at all. All right, so let's look at one of the first problems. All right, is yes, there are a lot of people, just like when we talked about the farmers struggling, the African Americans struggling, and the poor people struggling. Same thing with business. While some businesses did well, some of the basic ones did not do well. All right, some of the ones that did well were textile mills, mining, the automobile industry, using all that new technology to increase efficiency, meaning they're making more goods at a cheaper cost. All right, so when you look at it, all right, lots of goods are being made, but this one down here, people aren't getting paid any more money. So if we have more goods coming out onto the market, but people's pay rate, but people's pay isn't going up, they're not going to be able to buy all of these extra goods, and that's going to lead to a slowdown in the economy because businesses are going to start cutting back, and they're going to realize, they're making too many goods, they're not making enough, they're not selling them all. We need to cut back. All right, so when they find out they couldn't sell it, they had to, the one with the easiest way, if you own a business, one of your single biggest expenses is your labor. All right, so if your business is not doing well, you're going to lay off workers. That's just the nature of the beast, right? And then when you start doing well and you're making money, then you can look at hiring more workers back. So in addition to people not having enough money to buy all of these new goods, now people are losing their jobs. They're definitely not going to be able to pay their goods. So you start to get a little cycle here, right? No job, no money, no buy goods. All right, farmers, we know they struggled because of the tariff and competition from Canada, but this is a biggie here. They're also, in World War I in the 1920s, farmers got used to having a large market for their goods, meaning people wanted to buy what it was that they were growing, right? So they start growing a lot, and when you start selling too many products, you're not able to sell them. Think about it like with clothing stores. Right? When they have too many clothes, what do they have to do? They have to have a sale. So overproduction, in order to sell those crops, you got to lower your prices. And farmers actually took out large loans during the Roaring '20s when things were going really well. But now that the prices are falling, farmers are not able to make those loans, and that's gonna cause some problems for the farmers. All right, and then the illusion. We know illusion means, it looks like one thing, but it's really another. It's kind of like the Gilded Age. On the surface, it looks like the United States is doing really well, but when you get right down deep, okay, there's a bigger and bigger and bigger chunk of the population, almost like every month that goes by, every year that goes by, right, there's a bigger chunk of the population that starts to struggle, right? You have all these new goods coming onto the market, but most people don't have the money, right? They don't have the job to be able to do that. It's really just a select few at this point, at this stage, that are able to enjoy all of that wealth, right? And you can see some of the pictures here. Unemployment is the biggie, right? That's kind of one of the single biggest red flags in the economy is how good is the country doing in finding jobs for people who are able and want to work. Right, and that's still a big issue today, right? The government's constantly trying to maintain control over the unemployment rate. All right, and now here's where we start getting into the stock market. All right, we know that people in the 1920s used credit and installment buying and buying on margin. Right, they did all that to buy goods that maybe or maybe they didn't have enough money for. It's kind of like the credit card today, right? But then when we start looking at taking that concept of buying things that we don't have money for, people started to apply it to the stock market, because even though the economy was starting to slow down a little bit, the stock market was still growing, meaning businesses were still doing well. Even if other avenues of the other parts of the economy weren't doing well, the stock market was. So people began doing what's called speculation, meaning buying and selling risky stocks. The whole idea is to make as much money as quickly as we can. All right. So within speculation, you would go to the bank, you'd get a loan. You take the loan, you go and buy stocks. Stock price, stock value would go up. You would take the money that when you sell the stock, you'd pay off your loan, and then you pocket the rest. What happens if you take a loan out, you buy stocks, the stock plummets and you lose money? Now you lost money and you can't pay the loan back. So now you're in twice as deep a hole, right? And a lot of people were doing that throughout the 1920s into the 1930s, and that's going to be another issue, is that people are buying stocks that they don't have money for. They're buying it on credit and then trying to speculate, right? A lot of people, the stock market crash, a lot of people make the misassumption, and if I were to ask them what caused the Great Depression, right off the bat, people are immediately going to say, oh, it was the stock market crash. No, I mean, it's kind of like if you take a little snowball and you roll it in the snow, what happens to it? It starts to get bigger. So the crash is kind of like that tipping point. It gets the ball rolling, and then once the ball gets rolling, there's no way to stop it. So we're looking at the stock market crash. Okay, I got a couple slides for you a couple pictures for you on the next slide here. Right, but after Hoover gets elected, the economy really kind of comes to a screeching halt. It starts to slow down, and then the stock market just takes it, or however low it was, it just takes it even lower. But it's important to know that it is not the cause of the depression. It's merely just the first step, all right, in a rapidly escalating series of events. All right, so here's a couple of the pictures. All right. The causes of the you can always pause this and go back and look at it, the causes of the 1929 stock market crash, right? But here's kind of showing you the higher up the stock market is, the stronger the economy is. So you can see all throughout the Roaring 20s, yes, it has its little ups and downs, but for the most part, it's all going up, right? And then over a span of just a couple days, right, it just boom down. It just, I mean, like, look at here, Black Tuesday, in the span of couple days, all right, the stock market is just going to take a massive hit, and that's going to scare a lot of people, right? They're going to start selling their stocks. They're going to go to the banks and take out their money, right? Once again, remember that snowball, right? It's starting to snowball into a really big problem. And then just funny cartoon poster. This was just this political cartoon, but you can apply it to the stock market, right? It was going up, it was going up, it was going up, going up, going up. Boom, it's going down. Okay, now looking at banks, all right? Once the stock market crashes, people immediately get worried about their money. So they rush to the nearest bank to take their money out. Well, we can look at in class how banks operate, but essentially banks take money that people deposit in it, and then they give that money out in the form of loans, right? So if every single person were to go to a bank and ask for their money back, right, the bank wouldn't be able to cover all of the deposits that they had in there, right, because they went and gave that money out in the form of loan. That's how banks make money. They're businesses. They make money off of the interest of the loans that they give out. But when all the people rush to the banks after the stock market crashes, banks simply just say, I don't have any more money, and they have to close, right? And that led to people losing their entire life savings. Right now, once again, they're not able to purchase their goods. Businesses have to fire more workers because they're losing money. Right. So these two pictures down here are showing what are called bank runs, where the people rush to the bank to try and get their money out, and the banks have to simply go out and say, I'm sorry, I don't have any money left. And if you're at the end of the line, there's nothing you could do about it. Right. And then this is kind of a mean cartoon, but it kind of gets the point across. Right. You can see a bank robber in here robbing the bank teller, and obviously you can kind of look at him and be like, he's like, yeah, give me all your money. what's the caption say? Fill the bag up with what is what the teller's saying. I don't have any money left. So yeah, it's kind of mean and maybe slightly inappropriate because it instills violence and guns, but you get the point across. All right, this is just a quick little graph showing you, right, the amount of banks that are closing throughout, this is in thousands, the number of banks that are closing, right, throughout the late 20s into the early 30s. All right, so you can see at the end of the 1920s, crashes in 29, you start seeing, right, this is showing you, showing you the amount of banks that are in existence, and you can see it slowly starts coming down, and then, you know, throughout 30, 31, 32, right, the banks are all starting to close. So this is kind of what I was explaining to you before, right? The way banks operate is on loans, and people take loans out and then, you know, repay their loans plus interest, right? But if people aren't paying back their loans, meaning the bank's not getting money, they're not able to give money back to people, and then as a result they're forced to close, and people just lose all faith in banks, and they'd rather just keep their money at home. But that's bad for the economy because banks, you know, give that money back out in forms of loans so people can buy cars and homes and start businesses, things like that. All right, this is an interesting picture here. I mean, you got a lot of other information floating around it, so if you need to pause it just to go through it, you know, just hit the space bar and pause it. But I want you to take a peek at the sign on his car. Now, this is a fancy car. You can see he's dressed. He's not some Joe Schmo. Okay, he's a businessman. He's a banker, right? But the sign says $100 will buy this car. He must have cash because he lost everything on the stock market. All right, just another example of how quickly, right, that the crash of the stock market impacted the American people. All right, here's another picture of a bank run. I think it was one of the same pictures we had before, but I like the caption. All right, so if you need to look at that, you know, the panicking, right, definitely pause it and glance at that. All right, and I added a little note there about how lines would go all the way around the corner, and if you're at the end of the line, right, you lost out on all your money.